Now let's discuss the upper layers of the OSI model. The application layer is the user's interface to the network. User interface. This is where the user interacts with the network by way of some application or some program that provides access or interaction with the network. This is also the layer at which communication partners are identified. In other words, what takes place here is, say for instance, you're on a web page and you point and click on a particular link. Once you've clicked on that link, you're identifying the server at some other remote location that you're actually wanting to communicate with. So by clicking on that link, you're identifying the communication partner. Through that user interface, that browser window, you're identifying the communication partner at the other end. Now, in order for this to take place, we use certain protocols such as HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol, being used for those browser windows such as Internet Explorer and Netscape Navigator. And then also another protocol would be Telnet. Telnet is being used for remote control or remote access to another device that you're wanting to configure. Also another protocol would be FTP, File Transfer Protocol, which is what would be used to download files. Oftentimes across the internet, you can use FTP, and then there's what we call TFTP, Trivial File Transfer Protocol. This is a scaled-down version of File Transfer Protocol, of FTP, used for smaller file transfers. And this particular one is going to use this unreliable communication with UDP. In other words, this particular application won't use acknowledgments, whereas FTP relies on acknowledgments that are available through the TCP protocol. Okay, so FTP uses TCP and TFTP will use User Datagram Protocol, UDP. So those are a few examples of protocols that you might have there. I can throw in a couple of others real quick. SMTP, that's Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, that's for email. SNMP, that's Simple Network Management Protocol, used for managing your network. These are a few examples of protocols that you would have utilized at the application layer. Now, it's important to note that just because we're using the word application here does not mean that any application that's used on a computer is going to be an application layer protocol. These are particularly applications that provide the user with an interface to the network itself, such as a browser window, such as an email program where I'm actually utilizing SMTP. These are not applications such as Microsoft Word or Microsoft Excel. Even though Excel or Word might include hyperlinks, those links are actually using the HTTP protocol. So that's an important little distinction to make there. Just because we've got application in the name here doesn't mean it's any application. It's particularly these protocols, these applications right here, that are being utilized to provide user interaction with the network. Layer 6, the presentation layer, is involved with the data format. The data format. This is the layer concerned with how the data is presented. So a good keyword here would be format, the data format. At this layer, we find special processing such as encryption, such as compression, and other forms of the data. At the application layer, this is the user's interaction where the user points or clicks or does some type of interaction. That user information from the application layer must be put into a particular format at the presentation layer to be sent across the network. A couple of examples here would be JPEG, a picture format, or MPEG, a movie format, or MIDI, music, or ASCII, which is text. These are all different formats of the user information that we might have at the application layer. The session layer is involved with keeping these different data streams separate. Keeps data streams separate. Say, for instance, you have a telnet session open to a remote device, and then you also want to look up some information about that router to determine how to configure a particular protocol or particular parameter in that router. You might open up a browser window using HTTP while at the same time Telnet is already open. You've got a Telnet session going, that's one data stream, and then there's another data stream for the HTTP. It is the session layer that is responsible for keeping those different data streams separate. In addition to this, you might open up another Telnet session to another device. And altogether, you've got a Telnet session here, another Telnet session going, and it's the session layer that keeps those different data streams separate. Now, the way that it does that is by usage of what we call port numbers at layer 4. At layer 4, the TCP and UDP headers, they're port numbers that are being used. There's a source port number and a destination port number. These port numbers indicate a particular application at the upper layer here. For instance, HTTP's port number would be port number 80. Telnet has port number 23. FTP is 20 and 21. TFTP is 69. SMTP is 25. SNMP 161. These are different port numbers that are specified at layer 4 to indicate the upper layer application that's being used. So the session layer is able to keep these data streams separate based on the port number that's in the segment header. In addition to that, say for instance you've got a unique source port and a particular destination port. Say for instance the source port number is 1028 and the destination port is 23. That means that a device on one end is using source port 1028 to access the Telnet application on another device. It is the session layer that's going to keep these data streams separate based on the information that's found in the segment header at layer 4. A couple of examples of protocols and standards that you might see referred to at the session layer include SQL. This is used for databases. Or NFS, Network File System, that's used with Unix. There are different examples here, but usually what you'll have is you'll have certain mechanisms built into the operating system that will keep the data streams separate, that will do the functions of the session layer. The last little thing to note about the session layer is that the session layer is responsible for establishing and terminating communication. So those are the upper layers of the OSI model. You have the application layer, which is the user interface, the presentation layer, which provides a data format, and the session layer, which keeps the data streams separate between applications.